Hello, Team Easy Dating Coach. I am so excited for today's interview. We're going to teach you how to love on purpose today. And we've got my new friends and longtime dating experts, Orna and Matthew Walters. Say hello to everybody.
Hey.
Hey, everybody. So happy that you're here with us today.
Yeah, definitely.
So first of all, before we get into some questions, how do we love on purpose?
Well, it's really been the mission of our business since we started, right? This idea of being intentional, not only in how you go about dating, but intentional in who you end up in a relationship with, intentional in your actions, intentional in your behavior, because we're all inundated with the belief of love on accident, right? Love by accident. It says, wow, if I just meet the right person, then it's all going to be magical and it's going to work out perfectly and I'm going to be happy ever after, right? All the songs, all the movies, all the books, they all talk about love by accident, as if love operates from, different universal laws than anything else, right? If you were talking about health or
your career or anything, we're told that anything we want in life, you should get educated, have a skill set, learn about it. But all this love thing, that's just going to magically happen when we meet this mythical right person. What a bunch of hooey-balooey that is. So, I didn't slip on a banana peel and land on Matthew and we're magically, married all these years and working together, right? So love on purpose is really about an intentional selection process from the very beginning, but also once you've made the selection to continue to choose that person over and over and over and over and over again.
Yes. Couldn't agree more with what you guys are saying. And I'm so glad you said it. So this might be a similar question, but why do some people tend to find love easily and some people struggle to find lasting love, do you think?
Well, we learn in our family of origin how to walk, how to talk, how to tie our shoes, all that stuff. And we actually learn about love in our family of origin as well. So, there's a lot of experts that talk about attachment theory, for example, or all of these other ways of thinking about how we attach to people. But we also learn what is familiar, and what is familiar then turns into what we're attracted to. So if you think about how a human being is wired, we're ultimately wired for survival. And we will choose, what did we say the other day? The devil that is familiar is much more attractive than the angel you've never met.
So just to make sure I'm understanding, and I think this is so interesting. So instead of choosing potentially who the right partner is for us, we're just picking, oh, I've done this, that makes sense. I'm going to go this way because that's what I've done in the past.
Well, it's, we'd love to say that it's like an intentional choice that people make, but it's happening on a subconscious level. And so let's break it down a little bit. So when we're born, we all heard this idea of, a tabula rasa, right? A blank slate, that baby is like just waiting to be imprinted about how to be and how to think and how to experience the world. And there are two emotional needs that every child must get met. Right? We need to feel loved and we need to feel safe. And we will take on any belief system, any behavior, any strategy in order to feel loved and safe in our family of origin. So we always explain it this way, right? That little baby at 2, 3, 4 years old doesn't have the ability to say, well, gee, mom, or gee, dad, what you're doing right now isn't really helpful for me. What would really help me right now is if you just hugged me and told you love me and that I was going to be safe. Right? Instead, we say things to ourselves like, what's wrong with me that my parent is behaving this way? Right? What's wrong with me that my parent is behaving this way? We take full responsibility for their behavior. So if we have, an alcoholic parent, or we have a parent who's missing, or we just have a parent who's just overwhelmed and not able to communicate well and not able to give us the basic things that we need in order to feel safe, right? We take on this initial wounding. And as we become adults and we start getting out in the dating world, what we find attractive is what is familiar to us. So it's a dynamic, right?
Yeah,
so it's a dynamic that we experience.
And so it's not a conscious choice. That familiar spark of attraction is from the subconscious, because remember, the subconscious sees everything as familiar or unfamiliar. So you could think of the subconscious as having two buckets, right? It has one bucket that's known, everything you've experienced. And then it has the other bucket of everything else, everything unknown or unexperienced. And the subconscious mind can't judge, right? We've all heard this saying, you can't reason with a 4-year-old. Well, you literally can't, because their mind hasn't developed to the point of where you can reason with that child. Around age 8, 9 is where this shift happens in the mind, and we're able to reason and evaluate and judge. And before that, that we're just like, like Matthew's saying, a clean slate. Everything is marked directly on the hard drive, so to speak, that subconscious mind. So we're wired for survival. So because you're alive today, your subconscious says, we'll just bring you more of the same stuff, and it figures you'll still survive those events. But it doesn't take into account the feelings that were brought about from those events. So your subconscious can't judge. It doesn't know if from those past events, if that brought you more joy, happiness, and bliss, or if it brought you misery, and if you were suicidal, right? It literally has no idea. I always say, if I were to write an autobiography, I don't know why I'm smiling because it's not funny, but the title of my autobiography would be Confessions of a Former Unlovable, because what I learned in my family of origin was that I was unlovable, right? I was a mess. I was unlovable. I was never just given, this unconditional love that we think we're supposed to receive from those people that, raise us. And so I grew up, always attracted to the guy who was completely emotionally unavailable, either literally unavailable, as in he's in a relationship with somebody else and I'm like the gal on the side, or he's emotionally unavailable, like an addict, right? I would say, oh, you could stick 100 men in, one room, all of them my same physical type, and one of them is the addict, and I would pick that addict every day of the week and twice on Sunday, right? And so the shift had to happen inside of me, as an example, so that I would find a guy who is, available, emotionally available to be in a relationship, to meet me where I desire him to meet me, right? To be able to reflect that kind of love that I desire, instead of the kind of love that was familiar, which was filled with, unfortunately, a lot of abuse in my family of origin.
So you got accustomed to parents not giving you conditional love. So then when the guy showed up that wasn't available, that was familiar because he wasn't giving you the love. And that's what's like, ooh, this is exactly what I'm used to. And this is perfect. That's what my parents did.
Yeah, exactly. And I was constantly like twisting into a pretzel, like weird yoga pose. Like, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? Like, there's this scene, I don't know if you've ever seen Moulin Rouge with Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman. And there's that opening scene when he sees her for the first time. She comes down on the swing. And then there's a scene where she's under like the skirts changing into different outfits with the guy who runs the Moulin Rouge, right? And she's like, well, what do you think he's going to like? Because she thinks she's meeting the Duke, right? She's like, wilting flower, this, that, blah, blah. And oh my gosh, I was laughing my ass off in the theater the first time I saw it, because I was like, oh, that's me. I see the guy and I go, what is he going to like? How can I be this thing that he will then, pick me, and then a few months down the line, whether, if he does pick me, he's like running away from me anyway. So that didn't really work out so well.
So what happened when a different guy actually liked who you were? Did you go run away because you're like, what? He's into me? Or how did that all
it's so weird. Yeah, you got it. It's so awkward. Actually, Matthew has a great story about that.
Yeah. So, looking at this wounding story, it's like, my story, my family of origin is a typical Midwestern family. My parents were married for 57 years before my mother passed a few years ago, and large family. And we didn't express emotion very well. I was the youngest. And the way my family expresses emotion is through sarcasm, through teasing, right? And so as a small child, you don't understand that that's what's happening. You don't go, wow, these people really love me because they're teasing me. Instead, you sort of go, well, what's wrong with me that I'm constantly being teased and picked on, right? And so I grew up with a belief that there was something wrong with me, that I was going to screw things up, right? Because that was the story for my older brothers. Oh, Matthew screwed it up again, right? And so that was my story around love. And so one, unattractive women, not unattractive, unavailable women were very attractive to me, right? Because it's like, oh, that felt like the rejection I was getting in my family. And two, when I met a woman who really liked me, I had this weird inner dialogue, right? Like the first thought I would always have is, well, what's wrong with you, right? That you really think I'm great, right? What's wrong with you? And then the second thought I had was, oh, that's okay. Wait till you get to know me. Because then at some point in the relationship, I would sabotage it.
And
right?
screw it up.
I'd screw it up. And it was sort of this loop that I was stuck on, right? So I was chasing women who weren't interested in me. And then the ones who were interested, I'd be like, all right, whatever, wait till you get to know me. You're going to see the asshole inside, right? And then, of course, that would show up because that was my belief about myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. So since I'm sure there's a lot of women watching this that are tired of choosing the wrong men. And so, Orna,
yes, sir.
How can they get themselves to start picking the right men, seeing these signs, stop going after unavailable men, and be happy with a man that's got his act together and is actually into them, and they could have a real life and future together?
Sure. Well, the thing is the issue is in your subconscious. So when we talk about that initial wounding from your childhood, we call that your love imprint, right? So your love imprint is your limiting beliefs, your mental, emotional patterns, and behavioral strategies around giving and receiving love that you learn in your family of origin. And it's happening on autopilot, right? Our subconscious adds things up. Our mind literally connects things like links in a chain and says, this is like that. So in a sense, there needs to be a transformation that happens not through the conscious mind, because you can't say to your subconscious, hey, Orna's subconscious, I want you to pick these new kind of men, right? I'm not doing anything, right? Because the subconscious doesn't speak the language of English or French or Swahili. It's not language in the same way. So what really needs to happen is a shift on the subconscious level so that there's a new experience. In other words, when we're working with a client, it's not like talk therapy, right? We do process work so that the client has a new experience. And you know that saying that we have, right? It's like riding a bike. It's like riding a bike, right? And what we mean by that is once you have the experience yourself of what it takes to balance that bicycle all on your own without somebody holding it or training wheels or whatever, that you don't forget the sensation of what it's like to balance it, right? That you'll never forget it. And in a sense, what we do in our work with our clients is we give them a new experience, one that is in alignment with what it is they desire. And when you have this new experience, you can't then unhave it. So it's not like the repetition learning of, just trying to do something over and over through willpower and choosing something else. I mean, trust me, I tried that. Oh, the nice guy, I'll do that for a while. Oh man, did I break that guy's heart? I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Rob, if you're watching me. I really tried to make that one work, right? And so I really want people to understand it's about having a new kind of experience. So we think that the part of us that's running the show is this big, thing between our ears, this big prefrontal cortex, but it's actually not. So just like if you were to sit down and put on a shoe that had shoelaces and you thought, okay, I'm going to try to tie it a different way, right? Like you could search it here on YouTube, how to tie your shoe. Trust me, I have. I think there's something like 28 different ways. But most of us only learn one way to tie a shoe, right? And when you first learned how to do that, it took your full focus. And then to learn a new way, it also has to take your full focus. So when you think of a true transformation, it happens over a condensed period of time, right? Like a lemon on a tree doesn't go from being hard and solid green to the next moment being soft, ripe, and yellow, right? It happens through a condensed period of time. And that's really, if you're listening to my voice right now, that's the kind of experience you're looking for. You're looking for a permanent transformation that doesn't necessarily happen in a moment's time. It happens over a condensed period of time.
What you have to realize, right, is this emotional story that we're carrying from childhood, this love imprint we're carrying from childhood, has all this emotional energy tied into it, right? And a lot of people talk about the law of attraction and how do you, think a certain way in order to get something into your life, right? But what we forget is it's the emotion that's the rudder on the boat. It's the emotion that's steering the boat, not what you're thinking. You can think positively all you want, but if deep inside you're harboring all this anger, right? It's the anger that's manifesting your experience, not the thinking positive. So if you want to think about it, break it down in steps, right? The first step you got to do is look at your patterns. Look at your patterns in your intimate relationships. And everybody says, we always run across somebody who says, I don't have a pattern.
All the guys are different.
Right? We guarantee you the guys may be different, but the situation is similar.
Because you're the same.
Because you're the common denominator in all of your relationships, right? So you have to discover what that pattern is. And then you have to be able to look at that pattern and see how that pattern is reflected in your family of origin and where it really comes from, right? What the emotional story of that pattern is. So then if we talk about the process work.
I'm going to give it another word, right? Because I think it's helpful. I don't mean to interrupt you. Sure. But, when we say story, we don't mean to diminish the events of the past. So another way of saying that is your mental emotional pattern when it comes to your heart, when it comes to intimate relationship, right? That mental emotional pattern is everything. And so when you start to understand that your subconscious sends you signals, right? And so through identifying this pattern, that's the place where you really get into that Pandora's box, I guess you will, of the subconscious mind.
Right. And so you identify the pattern, you discover that pattern. Then you look at what is the emotional wounding, what's the emotional story in the pattern, and you do the work of healing that. And when Orna talks about process work and us processing on the subconscious, that's really what we do, right? We guide somebody into those deep recesses of the subconscious and allow us to access those old stories and to heal them, to change them. And it doesn't mean that old way of being, that old way of thinking just magically disappears. You want to think about it like a path in the woods, right? If you've ever gone on a hike in the woods, there's a well-worn path that everybody's hiking over and over again. And that well-worn path is your way of, your conditioned way of thinking and being. It's your emotional story, it's your emotional patterns. And what we do when we access the subconscious is we create a new pathway, right? But it's a young pathway. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be, you need to start walking that new path, and you need to let the weeds grow on the other path to nurture that new way of thinking and that new way of being. So it's a combination of this process work with also sort of, conscious steps, conscious ways of approaching dating, conscious ways of approaching communication and dating and everything like that.
So I want to really give, I know you have another question, Mike, but just because to answer your question, because they're like, well, what do we do then? And so I want to give all of those 8-type personality women like me something to do. I'm going to tell you, though, you're doing too much. I'll just tell you that to begin with, ladies. You're doing way too much. So I'm going to give you something to do that it's actually simple. I'm not saying it's easy. It's a simple concept. It may not be easy for you to do, which is in the dating process, don't bring your iron and your ironing board along. So what I mean by that is don't iron out the bumps. Like, the reality is when you find somebody really freaking hot, you want to excuse away all the things that are those warning signs that he might not be the guy. And so if you're really looking for a lasting partnership, you have to know how you and that other person are going to navigate through the bumps in the road, because life sends you challenges, whether you're coupled off or whether you're single. You're going to get thrown curveballs. So if you don't iron out the bumps, and I'm not saying go look for conflict, right? We're all somewhat conflict avoidant as human beings. That if you actually just notice those conflicts or those bumps in the road or whatever it is, those things that are different, then you can really start to see, how does this person respond? How do we work it through together? Sometimes, our email box is full. Every morning I get up and we get emails from around the globe, and I don't think there's a week in the year that goes by where somebody doesn't stumble upon our stuff, our work, and, after doing this over a decade, for as long as we have, and they usually send some kind of message, sort of like, you're so lucky. Oh, Orna, you're so lucky you found a man, like Matthew. And I think, Really? Gosh, if you know everything about my story, I don't really, my past, I don't feel all that lucky necessarily. I mean, we didn't get together until after 40. I mean, there's like a lot of stuff that really happened that was quite traumatizing for me, right? I don't think luck had anything to do with it. And I also think when we think, if you're listening to me now and you think luck has something to do with it, and you think you have to be lucky in order to have love, you better decide you're the luckiest lady in the land, because if you believe luck is part of it, then you better make yourself lucky, right? So the doing, right, the assignment for you right now is to understand these patterns in your strategies is when there's a bump in the road, the guy you really are, you find hot, what do you tend to do? Right? Do you iron it out? Do you try to avoid it?
Do you run away and say, oh, forget this, it's not going to work?
Or do you make a preemptive strike and just cut him off immediately? Right? You know the preemptive strike, Mike, right? Like, oh, I'm done with you now. Bye. Right? Like,
yes. Certainly had that happen. And I think in the early stages of dating, unfortunately, I think on both sides, that's kind of become the thing to do is they don't kind of see it out and, well, how can we work through this together? And I guess, Orna, I believe you're saying, well, let's figure out how we are going to work this out. And if we've got a good team effort to come to, then it's good.
If it's capable, right? I mean, Matthew and I, our first fight was about fresh figs. Okay.
Oddly enough,
it was about fresh figs. And you know what? We had fresh figs in our wedding cake. We had fresh black mission figs in our wedding cake.
Because it was a symbol for us of how we navigated that initial conflict, right? How we were able to communicate, how we were able to reconnect, how we were able to have respect and understanding for each other, right? And go, oh.
Because we learned a lot through that very first conflict, right? And I mean, I know it sounds silly to say we had a fight over fresh figs, but we did, because it's like I'm the kind of person that, I came over to Matthew's place with the fresh figs. I'm doing the fresh fig dance, like I love fresh figs, man. They're just coming into season, by the way, when we're recording this right now. And I'm like, I can't wait to get me some black mission figs, right? I'm like waiting for the season to start. And Matthew was like, so I just didn't think, he liked them. And then, it's this whole thing where I discovered so much about him and, oh my gosh, the way he is about food, that's a whole nother thing, like we don't need to share all of our, sort of dirty laundry. We're happy to share. I mean, like all of our clients ask us, like, do you guys fight? We're like, yeah, well, what does it sound like? Well, it sounds like a fight. We're two human beings. What do you think it sounds like? But it's what we do with a fight. And that's what we want you to understand, that conflict of whatever size, right? The tiniest little thing, little oyster fork, all the way to some giant, dynamite stick, that all of those conflicts can lead to a deeper connection with another person. And that if you're going to spend a lifetime with somebody, if you're going to raise kids with that person, if you're going to build a business with that person, if you're going to travel the world together, if you're going to weather whatever storms come your way, boy, you got to know how that person's going to respond when you're not on the same page.
Absolutely. And I love that. We're working on communication and we're going to see how we do together. I love it. All right. I want to totally shift gears.
Okay.
Matthew.
Yeah.
Help me out here. What is the key to attraction?
Oh, the key to attraction is that recognition of what is familiar. And we've been talking about that all along, right? Attraction is that recognition that there's something familiar here. There's a familiar dynamic. There's a familiar energy. There's a familiarity to this person, right? And so understanding that attraction is familiarity means you can navigate that in a much more conscious way, right? Because we tend to think of attraction as this weird chemical animal thing that we have no control over, right? Why this guy and not that guy? Why this guy who's really so nice and really seems to really like me? Why is that not attractive, right? Why is this guy who's kind of a jerk? Why is that attractive? Or whatever your pattern is, right? Just realize that it's your subconscious saying, this is familiar, this is familiar, this is familiar, right? And it doesn't say familiar bad or familiar good. We mistake the energy of recognition with something deeper and something more profound than what it actually is.
So
the truth is,
Yeah.
Again, if I could put my 2 cents, I know you asked Matthew, but I'm going to sneak in here if you don't mind. Because we put so much emphasis on the chemistry part when it's only one ingredient. You know, if you just have yeast, you don't have bread, right? Yeast is just one freaking ingredient. Now, at the same token, you can't throw that ingredient out, right? Chemistry is an essential part to a selection process because you need it. It's there for a reason, right? But we leverage everything on the chemistry, and that's where it's wrong. It's just as important as the flour and the water and all the other ingredients we're going to put in our yummy bread, right? So we don't have yeast, we end up with, you know, like matzah, like a cracker, right? We don't want that. We still want bread, right? So you've got to have that chemistry, but it's not everything.
Yeah. So I want to ask both of you. So I think, you know, with chemistry, we look at this and we're like, here's the emotion I'm feeling with this person. I feel happy. I feel excited. Like I'm just these intense emotions of butterflies is, I guess, the way to, we've coined it. But butterflies doesn't mean we can be life partners. So what is the process to start looking at this logically and start determining, can this person really fit into my life? Can we have a sustained relationship? How do we do that?
So the process is one of communication, first off, right? We always say, and it's not about being logical, it's about being authentic. Because most people are not authentic early on in a relationship. They feel that chemistry, they feel that attraction. And like Orna said, they go, what shape, how can I be? And quote unquote, we put on our best behavior, right? And we try to paint ourselves in the best light. And we're not saying show up, you know, and put all your crap on the table on the first date. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you want to show up and be authentic. And what we mean by being authentic is you want to speak your truth. You want to talk about how you feel, especially if you're a woman. You want to share how you feel, right? Or how you would feel if you want to make a request of somebody. And like Orna said before, also, you don't want to iron out the conflicts. You want to let those little conflicts show up and see how somebody responds. And if somebody makes it past that, right? If you're able to just be authentic and be yourself and they go, wow, I still like you, right? Just as you are, because that's what we want, right? What does everybody want? We want to be loved for who we really are, yet we rarely do we show up as who we really are. So in order to be loved as who you are, you got to show up as who you are. So you get that. Somebody accepts you as who you are, and somebody's able to navigate conflict with you. And so you go, okay, so there's some ingredients here that we can work with, right? And you get to that stage where you're going to maybe move into exclusivity, maybe move into deeper dating, and then you go, okay, so do we share the same values, right? Do we have the same values about what's important to us in our life and in the world? And can we, because we share values, can we navigate through the bigger bumps that life's going to bring us?
Yeah, I mean, a values match is ultimately what creates longevity in a relationship, right? It doesn't matter if you have the same hobbies, you like the same kind of music, movies, blah, blah, all that stuff. Who cares? No, that doesn't matter at all. Or that other thing, right? All these dating coaches out there, make a list of the qualities of the guy. What are you going to do where you will, cast a spell that the guy shows up? No, he's not going to materialize out of thin air. But what we do it backwards, right? We date backwards. And what I mean by dating backwards is we meet somebody and we go out with all this hope on that date, right? The first meet, and we have all this hope that it's going to be this person. And yet we give a stranger the benefit of the doubt because we have hope and a feeling. I'm like, really? Have you ever had a feeling last, Mike? Ever? Good, bad, indifferent? What? You ever have a feeling last? Right? No, they're temporary.
Yeah.
We never have a feeling last, right? Now, when we feel badly, we lie to ourselves, right? When we feel badly and we're in despair, we're like, oh my God, I can't imagine ever feeling better. But we never lie to ourselves when we're feeling good. Nobody ever is like, I'm so blissfully happy. I think I'm going to stay this way forever, right? No, our feelings don't last. So it makes my brain just completely cuckoo, like, how can we choose a life partner based on a feeling? It's so ludicrous. Because a feeling doesn't freaking last. There's no feeling that's ever going to last. I mean, I love Matthew, oh my God, with every fiber of my being, right? I love this man. Have I been angry at him? Yes, absolutely, right? And so it's silly to leverage everything on the feeling state. So ultimately, as you do, pass through these certain phases, right? We all know about the romance phase, but everybody, as soon as, you know, especially in this day and age, we land in the power struggle, and the power struggle is inevitable. There's no couple that doesn't pass through the power struggle. And so dating backwards, we give the benefit of the doubt to a stranger, then we get exclusive with that stranger, and then we land in the power struggle and we go, oh crap, we stop giving that person the benefit of the doubt, and we start doubting ourselves, and we think, oh my gosh, I picked the wrong person, because we're in this power struggle. And it's so ludicrous, because the power struggle is a natural hangover from that romance phase that is so juicy. And what you're looking for is, you can't have a truncated romance phase. If you have a truncated romance phase, let it die. Let it die on the vine, kids. Like, seriously.
It's going to be too difficult to navigate that power struggle.
Run, don't walk. You know, like, walk away, run. Because a truncated romance phase, it means there's too much trouble ahead, right? That's a big warning sign. So you want a nice, long, juicy romance phase. It's like gas in the tank of your relationship. And that gas in your tank gets you over the hump of the power struggle, right? The power struggle itself is, not only is it a hangover from all those feel-good chemicals that show up in the beginning, but it's actually an individuation of the two people, right? That Jerry Maguire movie, like seriously, that it's so crazy, this you complete me. No, that's a codependent relationship. You need two whole people that come together, that choose each other. And when you hit the power struggle, it's an individuation, just like a teenager individuating from their parents in the terrible teens, right?
Sorry, can you explain this to me? And I think other people are not too sure. All right, so we've got our relationship starting, and then we go into the power struggle. What is the power struggle? I've never heard of this terminology before.
Okay, so you think about, there's 5 stages in relationship, and most people only experience the first 2. So the first stage is the romance stage. And science tells us over and over again, when we're falling in love, that the brain is flooded with feel-good chemicals. It's flooded with dopamine and epinephrine, right? All these feel-good chemicals that oxytocin, that make us feel like we're on drugs, right? But we're not going to live like that for the rest of our lives. You're not going to walk around like high on love for the rest of your life. Those drugs will wear off. And when those drugs wear off, you're suddenly, we hear this phrase all the time, well, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. Right? What a ludicrous thing to say, because it just means that the feel-good chemicals are wearing off and you're falling into the natural hangover from all those drugs, which is, you know, initially it's, wow, this person is so new and unique and different and so exciting. I can't wait to learn more about them, right? And the power struggle says, wow, this person is so different. I wish they were more like me. We would get along better. Right?
The power struggle.
So this is the natural development of a relationship. And so the key to a relationship surviving the power struggle, is to be able to get past that phase, to learn how to stop doing the tug of war with each other, right? I wish you'd be more like me, or do it more like me, or respond more like me to this stress that we're having together, right? Instead to say, you know what? I remember what it was like to be falling in love with you. Right? I remember all those feel-good chemicals, and I know that that can show up again in our relationship. So I'm going to stop fighting you, and I'm going to start fighting for our relationship.
And that's phase 3, right? And I just want to give credit where credit is due. There's a lot of labels around the 5 stages of relationship. We tend to use Dr. Susan Campbell's labels. So Dr. Susan Campbell calls the 5 stages the romance phase, the power struggle. The 3rd stage is the stability stage. Okay, we'll talk more about that. I'll give you all the names of all the stages as Dr. Susan Campbell says them. Stage number 4 is the commitment stage. That's right, folks. You're not ready to make a lifelong commitment to somebody until you've gone through the first 3 stages. And in the 4th stage, you're ready to accept that person like you found them in the as-is section at IKEA. And you're like, even though it's not perfect and there's bumps and scratches, I'm going to take this thing home and love it as is, right? That's the commitment stage. I can love you, warts and all. I accept you exactly as you are. If nothing changes about you from now until the end of time, I choose you, right? That's a real commitment to somebody. And you're ready to make that lifelong commitment. And then the 5th stage of relationship is the co-creation, or also known as the bliss stage of relationship. So the co-creation phase is where there's so much love between these two people that they create something even larger than just the two of them. So traditionally, that's children, of course, to actually procreate and raise children together. But for a lot of other couples, it's other things. It can be philanthropy or charity. For us, it's definitely our work. Our Love on Purpose business is definitely our co-creation, right? That it's kind of like our child. It's been growing up now, right? So, this idea of us being stagnant, we're not as human beings or as a couple. So we move through those 5 stages in order, and then we hopscotch around. I mean, Matthew and I have revisited that power struggle just as much as we've revisited, the romance phase or any other place along the way, or the bliss phase, right? You don't stay stagnant, but you do hopscotch around once you've been through the 5, right? So what most people don't experience is that 3rd stage. And some couples actually get to that 3rd stage of relationship, of the stability stage, and it gets so comfortable there, and the two people are so conflict avoidant that they sweep everything under the rug as if they're going to stay in that stability stage, and then they slide back into the power struggle, and then they break up because they don't have the skill set to move forward into that commitment stage from the stability stage.
I always like to say it this way. Sex is instinctual, right? Procreation is instinctual. Long-term monogamous intimate relationship is not instinctual. It is something you have to learn. It is a skill you have to develop. It doesn't just happen because you quote unquote met the right person and it was easy with that person as opposed to some other person, right? There are still skills you need to have in order to make that relationship continue to grow, in order to keep the spark between the two of you, in order to develop all of that. There are skills you need to have.
Yes. So speaking of skills.
Yes, sir.
I know that you guys have a rockin' free gift that we're going to give my audience. And so, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plop it down in the description down there. And then I'll also put it as a top comment, so it'll also be on the top of the comments. So, Orna and Matthew, what is the free gift that we're giving away?
Well, we're giving to your audience out, to all the easy dating people out there. We're going to make it really easy for you because our ebook is what we're giving you. It's called Recognizing Mr. Right. Recognizing Mr. Right. Because, again, it's going to go over and more in depth about all the things we've been talking about. How do you know when it's the right person? I've been asked, oh my gosh, we've been interviewed probably a few thousand times now, I think, right? And people ask me all the time, how did you know, right? How did you know that Matthew was, the one and all that? And I can certainly describe the feeling that I had that was different with Matthew than was for any of my previous relationships, but it might not feel exactly that same for somebody else, So recognizing Mr. Right really walks you through more in depth these tips and tools about how to date for a soulmate, how to know when this is the right person for you.
And you can get that at recognizingmrright.com. When you go to download it, there's also an extra free bonus in there. It's an audio process called Self-Acceptance is the Key to Feeling Loved. And it really leads you through a process of beginning to develop a sense of self-acceptance, right? Loving yourself exactly as you are so that you can show up authentically.
Woo! That sounds awesome. And exactly what my folks need. We need a system to get Mr. Right and stop messing around with Mr. Wrong. So I love that. Well, Orna and Matthew, thank you so much for coming on here. I know I learned a ton, so I thoroughly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah, we're so happy to be here. Thank you for your whole community for joining us and listening in today. And Mike, it's been such a pleasure to meet you and get to know you. And I think we're going to spend a lot more time hanging out and doing stuff together.
I think so too. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit like. If you're not a subscriber, come on, join the team, go subscribe, and then hit the bell so that you actually get notifications for when videos come out. As you guys know, if you're already subscribed, I put out a video every single Tuesday. And Orna and Matthew, because of you and other guests, we're going to put out extra ones, bonus ones, probably on Thursday. So thank you everyone for watching. Orna and Matthew, thanks again. And we'll see everybody next week.
Bye. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome. Bye.